Welcome back to The Explainer. Let's jump right into Chapter 7 of Perverting Our Reproductive Nature, titled The Economics of Modern Dating.
So, to really wrap our heads around just how ruthless modern romance has become, listen to this number: 4.5%. According to leaked internal data analyzed in the book, on massive dating apps like Tinder, women swipe right on only 4.5% of men. I mean, just pause and think about the sheer scale of that for a second. Imagine walking into a crowded room with 100 guys. Fewer than 5 of them are getting even a passing glance. Out in the real world, charm, social context, a shared joke, those things give people a fighting chance. But on a screen, stripped down to pure metrics, 95 out of 100 guys are literally filtered out instantly. It's a staggering level of exclusion.
Okay, let's really dive into this. What exactly happens when romance stops being this organic community affair and mutates into a global, hyper-competitive marketplace? Well, the author's core thesis here is that invisible economic forces, things like supply, demand, scarcity, and algorithmic competition, are what's truly pulling the strings of modern love. But here's the kicker. Unlike a regular financial market that naturally wants to find balance and equilibrium, this biological marketplace, it doesn't. A normal economy corrects itself so buyers and sellers both win. But this specific marketplace is driven by primal, instinctual pressures unleashed in a digital arena, and it's fundamentally distorting how men and women relate to each other, often to the detriment of everyone involved.
Now, if you've been following along with our earlier explainers, you know this didn't just happen overnight, right? The author carefully maps out the tech shifts that set the stage for all of this. First, birth control comes along and totally changes the game by severing the biological consequence of reproduction from sex. Then, the explosion of digital porn chemically sedated male ambition and desire with endless, consequence-free novelty. And finally, modern dating apps hit the scene and completely gamified human connection. They turned finding a partner into an endless slot machine. You put these three massive shifts together and they've completely dismantled traditional relationship architecture. And that leaves us right where we are today, navigating this high-stakes, hyper-competitive dating economy.
Which brings us to a really foundational concept in the book: hypergamy. Now, the author presents this totally neutrally. It's not framed as some modern behavioral flaw or a sign of arrogance. It's looked at purely through an evolutionary and historical lens. Historically, hypergamy was this deeply wired biological safeguard. Think about our ancient ancestors for a second. Pregnancy and early motherhood were incredibly vulnerable times. So a woman naturally sought out a mate who could offer the most security, consistency, and strength to protect her and her kids. That drive to filter for competence and resources, it wasn't shallow. It was literally a matter of life and death. It's an instinct hardwired into human survival.
But here is where we hit a massive modern paradox. As a society, we rightfully celebrate the incredible socioeconomic rise of women. Over the last few decades, women have just been crushing it, surpassing men in college graduation rates, dominating prestigious professions, and boosting their earnings. It is a huge societal win. The catch? Biology hasn't quite caught up to sociology, because that ancient wiring to seek a partner of equal or higher status is still totally intact. So as a woman climbs higher educationally and financially, the pool of men who actually meet her instinctual standards shrinks. She's succeeding, but the dating pool isn't rising up with her.
Cultural commentator Rob Henderson hits the nail on the head here. He says, women's mate preferences haven't changed just because their social status has improved. What's changed is the number of men who qualify. Let's digest what that actually means on the ground. If a woman is in the top 20% of earners and education, her primal instincts are still whispering to look for a guy in that exact same bracket, or higher. But statistically speaking, there just aren't enough of those guys to go around anymore. The economic deck got entirely reshuffled. It creates this super frustrating reality that you've probably heard your own friends talk about. Women feel like there are no good men left, and men feel like they can never measure up.
So this narrowing of filters creates a dating pyramid that is incredibly top-heavy. Since everyone is biologically driven to reach for the top, a tiny fraction of high-status men, we're talking just the top 10 to 20%, end up soaking up the vast majority of female attention. They become this sort of romantic 1%. Meanwhile, the bottom 80 to 90% of average guys, they're effectively rendered invisible in this economy. We're looking at mass societal exclusion, where a huge majority of men are just priced out of the dating market entirely, unable to even secure a first date because they don't hit those baseline metrics.
The author points out how people have actually started quantifying this disparity with modern statistical tools. There's this one called the Female Delusion Calculator. It's kind of playful, but the math is stark. It lets users plug in the traits of their modern ideal man. You filter for a specific age range, a height over 6 feet, a six-figure income, making sure he's not currently married, and then it calculates the mathematical probability of that exact guy actually existing in the US population. Honestly, filtering for a tall, high-earning single guy in his late 20s, mathematically, it's pretty close to hunting for a unicorn in your backyard.
The results are genuinely sobering. When you combine all those traits, the statistical probability of that man existing often plummets to below 1%. Less than 1%. And this is a really important moment to pause and think about the so what here. We are talking about real people holding out for statistical ghosts. This isn't just about picky dating profiles, it is a profound systemic heartbreak. People are spending their prime years searching for a mathematical impossibility. And that just leads to chronic frustration, exhaustion, and ultimately, some intense real-world loneliness.
Expanding on his earlier thought, Henderson makes this really poignant observation. Hypergamy isn't toxic, it's tragic in this economy. The culture isn't producing them fast enough. The author really unpacks that word tragic. Women are doing absolutely everything society asked them to do. They got the degrees, they secured financial independence, they are thriving. But our culture completely failed to recalibrate the relational structures that actually make intimacy sustainable for them. We cheered their rise for sure, but totally failed to produce a generation of men capable of matching it. It's a tragic stalemate where no one gets what they actually want.
And all this leads the author to a pretty heavy conclusion. We've engineered a marketplace that has zero mutuality. The current dating economy runs entirely on algorithms and consumerism. And we really need to understand how destructive that is to the human psyche. When you're constantly swiping on a screen, the algorithm is training your brain for instant gratification. It rewards short-term thrills and aesthetic performance. But true commitment? That takes patience, sacrifice, and long-term safety. This digital marketplace literally penalizes vulnerability. It trains us to constantly scan the horizon for the next best option, discarding people like outdated gadgets, instead of investing in the hard, messy, beautiful work of building a life together.
So what's the fallout of severing our reproductive design? It's pretty severe, and it's hitting us from all sides. We've essentially built an environment that champions total, atomized independence over healthy, supportive interdependence. And in the process, we've pathologized our natural instincts. We actively tell women that wanting motherhood or a supportive partner is somehow a sign of weakness, and we tell men that the desire to lead or protect is inherently toxic. Add to that the paralyzing illusion of infinite choice on our screens, and everyone is just terrified to settle down. Ultimately, the author argues that we've created a generation at war with its own biology, desperately trying to survive in a modern system that directly clashes with our deep, ancient human need for faithfulness and belonging.
Which brings us to a really critical, sweeping question, and this sets up exactly where the book goes next. While modern women are left increasingly anxious and exhausted trying to find partners they can genuinely respect, a huge demographic of average men are asking, what is the point of trying at all? I mean, if you're inherently invisible to 95% of the dating pool, why play a game where the rules guarantee you're going to lose? Unable to compete in this rigged digital market, a massive number of young men are quietly, tragically withdrawing. And they aren't just withdrawing from dating, they are checking out of the workforce, out of higher education, out of society itself. We'll be exploring the devastating ripple effects of that silent exodus in our next explainer.
So, if our primal wiring is crashing headfirst into our digital reality, we really have to ask, can we ever redesign a system that actually serves human connection? Or are we just destined to remain lonely participants in a rigged market? To dive deeper into these concepts and interact with the data we've covered today, be sure to visit the interactive companion site at pervertingourreproductivenature.com, where you can also support the author directly. Thank you so much for learning with us today.